So this is one of the ways you can tell a guitar player is playing piano is, the right hand is doing what it should do, but most guitar players, when we play piano, all we do is play bass. Sort of single note bass, rather than real piano players can actually play chords there and chords with their right hand, but it is what it is. So when I write on piano, it's pretty much like this. Whatever. Okay, well, I guess this is the start of our little mini documentary. You can hear Zuzu in the background. She's our mascot for this album. So yeah, Sean and I have been talking as we went through the Kickstarter process. We, Sean did some great videos, and we were saying, hey, it'd be cool to do a little mini documentary on the making of the album. So thankfully, he agreed to spend some time to do that. And I think what we want to do is sort of show you my process. For those of you not familiar with the idea of Son of Sequel, about 1.5 years ago we did the Sequel album, which was sort of made to continue the GK musical genre, and people seemed to enjoy that, so I thought, well, let's do another one. So we decided to do Son of Sequel. So this one's going to be a little different. Not only will it have more of that sort of Gabriel Knight style music, but also it's going to have some more stuff that's more guitar based and some other styles of things I like to do, as well as some very cool soundscapes created by my good friend George Napier, who's a very talented composer, sound designer. So I think the combination of all of that should sort of give Son of Sequel its own voice, hopefully. And the last 1.5 months since we finished the Kickstarter has been both challenging and productive. But the good news is we've got the main 12 tunes written, and George and I are working on the approach for the soundscapes, and now we're starting the doc. So I hope you'll enjoy this and join us as we do episodes along the way, and we'll see how it all turns out. Okay, so as I mentioned, when I sort of got ready to start thinking about doing some focused writing, I came up to this my studio, and with Zuzu, of course, and found out that my computer that has been wonderful for 12 years, this computer served me, totally died, like dead to the world. And that computer has the programs that I record on, all the plugins I use, all my process. So it was kind of frustrating. So I said, okay, well, I guess this is the time. I'll order a new computer. It took a couple of weeks. But in the meantime, I wanted to start writing. I was starting to hear some things. So I decided, okay, I'll set up kind of a writing station, sort of a poor man's writing station, to capture things I'm going to write on keyboard and capture them on a little handheld digital recorder, and then do the same thing for guitar songs and try and capture those in a little digital form. So at least I have an idea, because one of the things I've found at my age is literally I could play something yesterday and love it, and tomorrow I would not be able to remember any of it. And I've never been the kind of guy who writes stuff down. I'll write changes down, but I don't really notate really well. So what I did is I set up this kind of writing station over here, and that's all I really use this stuff for. This is my old trusty Kurzweil, which I did GK2 and GK3 on, and I use that for writing keyboard-based stuff, and then that runs through a couple of preamps, and then those preamps run over to my board, and then I run out from the board into this, which is basically just a little digital 4-track, just like we used to use, back in the 80s. But it's great because it, allows me to capture an idea. I can even multi-track if I want to, though I'm too lazy to do that most of the time. And then I'll just export the little file, and as you'll see later, I end up with a collection of just simple little sketches, which will be the basis for a tune. So first I did a bunch of those on keyboard, and then I decided, okay, I'll try the same process with guitar-based things. So again, sort of going back to being lazy, rather than go through, miking guitars and stuff, I wanted to try and do acoustic guitar run through pedals. So I set up a bunch of pedals, various sort of tone modifying things and reverbs and EQs, and then I run the guitar through those into the preamps, and it's the same process into the board and then into the little, it's totally kind of ass backward because I'm using all this relatively high-end gear to end up here, which is like not great, but it was a fun process, and it really worked enough so that I have, the ideas for the core 12 tunes, and they're clear enough that I can work off them. Then I import them into my computer system and start from there. So it was good. It gave me a month of being able to still work even though I didn't have a computer, so I was happy about that. So finally, my new computer came. Though, when you do audio production, having to get a new computer is both the best of times and the worst of times, because you suddenly realize all of your thousands of plugins and programs have to be re-downloaded and installed, and very often re-authenticated. First you set up the computer, then you set up your main recording program, then you load a bunch of plugins, then you go through each plugin and you reauthorize it, which is always fun because you have to go back to the website of that manufacturer who, you haven't been to that site for 3 years and you've forgotten what your password was, and you can't gain access to your account to be able to authorize your plugin. So, imagine 2 weeks of that, and this is why my hair is gray. But it did finally come, and it's a really nice beast, this little black thing here. And I was very excited, and then it didn't work for 2 weeks. And working daily with the guys at the manufacturers, they couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. We never really truly figured out what the problem was. One day it just started working. So, not wanting, to look a gift horse in the mouth, I just ran with it, and thankfully it's been great. It's really nice and powerful, and it's allowed me to get back to my normal routine. So, my studio is set up. I have as I talked about, my writing station over there. This is my main computer and synthesizer area and various preamps and board. And then over here is my sort of main guitar area. And then, the walls are kind of where I keep the guitars. But what I was able to do is, get back into Studio One, which is what I record in, and all my various plugins. One of the dangers of being good friends with George Napier is this guy has thousands and thousands of plugins, and he's always like, "Hey, Robert, you got to get this one." So, it's one of those things where you end up with way too many choices, but they're all really helpful. So I was able to start production on the first tune, which is kind of not in the sequel style. It's more of a bossa nova. It's based in guitar, and it's just kind of a simple. It's just kind of stock bossa nova, but I wanted to do something that was simple guitar based and then see what I could do with it in terms of interesting choices. I'm not done, but I've got enough of it where I can see where the direction is going. I'm calling this tune Bossy and dedicating it to Jane. So that's the first thing I decided to tackle. And so this is that file, and as most of you know who have done anything with music software, this is the tracking area. This is the mixing area, and then these are all plugins for each track, which can be, reverbs, delays, compressors, EQs, all kinds of good stuff like that. So this, that's the first step in getting back into a normal workflow, and I'm really happy now to start attacking the other tunes. So, it's great. I'm able to sort of get back and build the basics of a tune. Usually I'll take the piano or the guitar part that I've done in the songwriting area and use that as a guide, and then start to build, maybe a piano part and a string part and drums if it's going to have that, or acoustic guitar or something like that. And then I'll start using soft synths, which, software-based instruments, which are usually strings or orchestras or brass or whatever. So I'll do all of that sort of in the box to get the main body, and then additional layers that I like to focus on. I'll do sort of synthesizer layers that are hardware based, and then I'll use these. So let's say I want to do a really interesting string sound as well as software bass strings. So, I'll take all these synths and find different mixes, different patches, string patches, and mix those together, and then have a few tracks of that I add. Then, if there's guitar in the tune, I'll do the same thing, kind of trying to think about, okay, which guitar would be most appropriate, and then what kinds of effects would I run that through, and that happens over here in the guitar area. And I will usually do, maybe 2 to 4 guitar tracks that way. So I end up with sort of a modular, sort of the mothership of the tune, some hardware-based synth stuff, some hardware-based guitar stuff, and then I bring it all hopefully together, and it works, whatever it's going to do.
Now, I had actually put some thought into this because I listened to the sketches several times, right? Mm-hmm. And I just sort of was like taking notes and things like that, and realizing that they're sketches, so they're the basis for things, because they're
right.
And
and the whole time you're going, really? Is that it?
No, although the bossa nova you sent me, I was like, okay, is he pulling my leg, or is this really going to go in there? So, but if it does go in there, I want to make like a cheesy 50s style video.
Hey, yeah, totally. It's going in there.
Okay.
It's going in.
George and I are having conversations about how to approach the soundscape elements of the album, which is a little bit challenging because you've got, me sort of focus on the more traditional tunes, and George is being tasked with finding some things that will weave between those, and in some cases set up or play off of a tune in terms of mood and texture. And we're talking about different levels of that, different approaches. Some might be very dark, some might be more sort of inspirational and aspirational, and some may be just more experimental. But hopefully they serve those core purposes.
Guitar open E, right? It's got some really kind of sort of simple, sort of not simple, but
yeah,
not heavily ornamented guitar stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I could really take something like that and pull it into like Cosmos or something and begin to really play with it. I mean, even if the song is very, ends up being very involved in everything, if it ends simply or begins simply, I've already got an idea of something to do with it. So I just throw that out there. The other thing that I was listening, Watcher is, in my humble opinion, is just screaming for one of Roger's string arrangements at the end.
Interesting.
That'd
be cool.
One of the cool things is the more we talk about it, it's really inspiring me to think about how I orchestrate and develop these tunes. I think hopefully it's helping George in thinking about what he's going to do as an approach. And it's also starting to have us think that this may end up having to be a double album, which is kind of unfortunate in terms of production costs and things down the line. But, it may be creatively that it's just going to be that broad and that sort of dictating that kind of scope, which would be cool. And then also, I've been working with Raleigh on picking a tune for the Scarlet Furies to reunite on. Unfortunately, we lost Buck Wilcox, who was a major part of the Scarlet Furies and a great friend, to cancer last year. But the rest of us are going to get together on a tune, and I think it should be really fun and bring another sort of flank to the album. So Raleigh and I are going through choices on tunes. She's very particular about what she wants to sing and what she's going to be excited about, and I think that's great because it just means the quality is going to be very cool. So we'll keep you posted on all of that as well. Get enough signal going here. Like one of the other more guitar-based things is just really simple. It's kind of find if I start with a tune that's as simple as possible, then it actually gives me more freedom down the line in what I might do with it, and it'll end up sounding very different. In fact, this one that I just played I think I'm probably going to do it on baritone guitar, which is kind of between normal guitar and bass guitar. So it'll have a really rich, sort of ethereal tone to it, hopefully. And then combined with a bunch of synths, hopefully to be an unusual combination. So that's just kind of where things start. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about as well was the GK2 opera, which we've committed to redoing the instrumental tracks for that as a part of the Kickstarter, which is going to be kind of huge, and both really exciting and a cool opportunity. So we've been thinking about different ways to approach that. The goal ultimately will be we'll come up with new recordings that everyone will get, where we take the old vocals and mix them with new instruments, and then hopefully with Sean's help we'll lay all that into the video. So we'll have a new version of the video with the new orchestration. So as I said kind of in my last update, it's easier for me to kind of think about these creative projects individually, so I can focus on them in terms of workflow and give them the attention, the specific attention that I think they need. So I'm focusing on the album first, and then when that is complete enough to go to mastering, I'll start to attack the opera more specifically. But in the meantime, what I have been doing, George and I have found some very cool software that will separate the old vocals from the existing recordings, which, with AI now, you can do almost anything. So it's really cool to know that we've got some good options on how to do that. And then also, as you'll see here, this is a group of samples from Abbey Road. Spitfire is actually the name of the company, but they're these amazing brass orchestras that they recorded in Abbey Road 1, which, as some of you may know, is sort of the ultimate room for recording huge orchestral soundtracks like Star Wars and all that stuff. So what they've done is they've captured those orchestras, and I'm using, starting to look for different combinations of brass and instruments that I will eventually use on the opera. So I am, gathering new tools and new groups of samples that I'll use as a part of the opera, and I think it's going to be massive when we, really get it done, because the quality of sample libraries and orchestras now is just so drastically improved compared to what it was back then. So I'm really excited to do it. But I do want to do it as a separate deal. So once we get the album done, then we're going to attack that. But I wanted you to know how we're thinking about it and how it's progressing. Okay, so that's our first episode of the gripping, thrilling documentary on the making of Son of Sequel. Hopefully there's been something in here you found interesting, and I'm sure as we go through the process, you're going to see new and other parts of our work, which is always both surprising and educational for me as well, because every time I sort of do an album or do a project, I end up learning a lot and discovering new things and new ways to work. So hopefully you'll discover some of that with me. And thanks again for joining, and we'll look forward to coming back at you with further episodes.